The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as the Zerathian ambassador activated the holographic display. Lyra sat in the human delegation seat, her fingers drumming absently on the polished obsidian table. Beside her, Ken leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, watching the alien dignitaries with barely concealed amusement. "Behold," the ambassador's translator crackled, his crystalline form pulsing with what Lyra had learned to recognize as pride, "the pinnacle of Zyrathian military innovation, the weapon that shall bring order to the lawless sectors of the galaxy." The hologram materialized above the table, a sleek device, no larger than a briefcase, with pulsing energy cores visible through transparent housing. The assembled delegates from across the galaxy leaned forward, their various appendages, tentacles, and sensory organs focused intently on the display. "This," the ambassador continued, "is the Ocular Disruptor Mark VII. It emits a precise wavelength of electromagnetic radiation that permanently damages the optical nerves of any biological entity within a 50-meter radius. The victim is rendered blind, unable to recover, unable to fight. A humane solution to conflict. No death, merely incapacitation." A murmur rippled through the chamber. The insectoid Krellin representative clicked her mandibles in what might have been approval. The gaseous Netherians swirled with colors indicating interest. Even the usually stoic Cornerians shifted in their seats. Lyra glanced at Ken. He'd stopped drumming his fingers. His expression had gone flat, neutral in a way that made her nervous. She'd worked with Ken long enough to know that look meant trouble. The Zerathian ambassador gestured grandly. "We propose to share this technology with the Council's peacekeeping forces. Imagine piracy eliminated, rebellions quelled, order maintained across all civilized space without the messy business of lethal force." "Fascinating," the Krellin delegate chittered. "The ethical implications alone?" Ken yawned. It wasn't a polite hand-over-mouth yawn. It was a jaw-cracking, utterly bored yawn that echoed through the vaulted chamber. Every eye, sensor, and optical organ turned toward the human delegation. "Ambassador Ken," the council arbiter's voice carried a note of warning. "Do you have something to contribute?" Ken straightened in his chair, scratching his chin thoughtfully. "Yeah, actually, we banned that." Silence. "I'm sorry?" The Zerathian ambassador's form flickered with confusion, or perhaps anger. "Blinding lasers," Ken said as casually as if he were discussing the weather. "We banned them. 1995, actually." "My bad. I thought it was 97, but Lyra's better with dates." He nodded toward his colleague. Lyra pulled up her data pad, her fingers flying across the screen. "Protocol on blinding laser weapons, adopted October 13th, 1995, entered into force July 30th, 1998. Protocol 4 to the 1980 Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons." She looked up, meeting the ambassador's crystalline gaze. "We outlawed weapons specifically designed to cause permanent blindness nearly 300 years ago." The chamber erupted. Delegates spoke over each other in a cacophony of languages, translation matrices struggling to keep pace. "Impossible," the Zerathian ambassador sputtered. "You're telling me your species, your violent, war-torn species, banned a non-lethal weapon?" "Well, yeah," Ken shrugged. "It was deemed unnecessarily cruel. Blindness is permanent, irreversible damage that condemns someone to a lifetime of disability. We decided that even in war that crossed a line. But you still use kinetic weapons." The ambassador's form was now pulsing a deep crimson. "Plasma cannons. Weapons that tear bodies apart, that kill instantly." "Sure," Lyra interjected, her voice calm but firm. "Because death in combat is sometimes unavoidable. But deliberately engineering a weapon whose sole purpose is to inflict permanent debilitating injury on someone, that's different. That's cruelty for cruelty's sake." The Corneran delegate, a massive being covered in chitinous plates, spoke for the first time. "The humans are correct. I have studied their history. They have extensive rules about warfare. Rules? The Zyrathian ambassador seemed genuinely baffled. You have rules for killing each other? Ken laughed, but there was no humor in it. Oh, buddy, you have no idea. We've got rules about what kind of bullets you can use. No hollow points in war. Rules about chemical weapons, biological weapons. Rules about targeting civilians, cultural sites, medics. We've got rules about torture, about prisoner treatment, about the size of naval mines. The Geneva Conventions, Lyra added. The Hague Conventions. The Rome Statute. Centuries of legal framework designed to make warfare, when it happens, as humane as possible. Humane warfare, the ambassador repeated, his translator struggling with the apparent contradiction. You slaughter each other by the millions, and you call it humane? We tried to slaughter each other by the millions, Ken corrected. Past tense. And yeah, even then we drew lines. Things we wouldn't do, no matter how desperate we got. Most of the time, anyway. Lyra stood, her datapad projecting a list into the air above the table. Poisoned weapons, banned in 1675. Expanding bullets, banned in 1899. Chemical weapons, banned in 1925 after we saw what they did in World War I. Biological weapons, banned in 1972. Landmines that don't self-destruct, banned in 1997. And yes, blinding lasers, banned in 1995. We didn't always follow our own rules, Ken admitted, standing beside Lyra. Humans are really good at finding loopholes, at justifying terrible things in the heat of the moment. But we made the rules, we tried, and every generation, we added more, made them stricter, because we learned that some weapons don't just kill, they dehumanize, they make suffering the point. The chamber had gone quiet again. The Zyrathian ambassador's form had faded to a pale, confused blue. So let me get this straight, the Krellin delegate said slowly. The species that wiped out 90% of its megafauna, that nearly rendered itself extinct multiple times, that fought wars on 6 continents simultaneously, that species decided some weapons were too cruel to use. Yeah, Lyra said simply. Because we learned what it meant to be on the receiving end. We learned that winning wasn't worth losing our humanity in the process. Ken picked up his datapad. So, Ambassador, about your ocular disruptor? Hard pass. If you want to join the galactic community with Earth's support, you'll need to dismantle those, all of them. And if we refuse? The ambassador's form flickered with indignation. Lyra smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Then you'll learn why the species that banned blinding lasers 300 years ago is the most feared military power in known space. Because we didn't ban them because we were soft. We banned them because we knew exactly how effective they were, and we decided we were better than that. She gathered her materials. We don't need your weapon, Ambassador. We've moved past that. The question is, are you ready to move past it too? The human delegation walked out of the chamber, leaving behind a council of aliens who were just beginning to understand what humanity meant when they said some things were too terrible, even for war. Outside, Ken turned to Lyra. Think they'll listen? Lyra glanced back at the chamber doors. They will. Because they're starting to realize something important. What's that? That the monsters who learn to restrain themselves are far more dangerous than the ones who never had to. Ken grinned. HFY, right? Humanity. Fuck yeah, Lyra agreed, and they walked together into the starlit corridors of the station, representatives of a species that had learned its lessons the hard way and refused to let the galaxy repeat their mistakes. The end.